And the session is called Polkadot, Providing Business Solutions. Siddharth, Singhal, welcome. You have over a decade and a half experience in the technology space and also having been involved in blockchain for quite a while. And Parity Technologies, as the director of enterprise, you guys build infrastructure for decentralized web as well, right? If I'm accurate.
No, that's pretty accurate.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. A little bit of research, eh? So, Siddharth, I'm going to hand it over to you. The audience are waiting to hear from you, and I will see you back in a little bit. Welcome, and the stage is all yours.
Perfect. So I'll take that as an affirmation. So I thought to take this opportunity to introduce Polkadot because it is a new beast in itself, and the way our approach is to blockchains in general or the entire industry is quite unique. So I thought to take an opportunity, and with that, I'm actually very excited to take you on the journey of creating Polkadot and what it means for the entire industry. So, as we all in this room know that Ethereum proved the concept of smart contracts, right? So, Vitalik Buterin, who created the vision of platforms of building programmable money, whereas programmable Bitcoin via smart contracts was already done by or proven by Nick Szabo in 1994. Now, Dr. Gavin Wood's vision of a world computer was one of the fundamental pillars of a new web called Web 3, right? And Dr. Gavin Wood, being the ex CTO and ex co-founder of Ethereum itself, then coined the term Web3. Now, how do we define Web3? Well, it's an extensible framework for creating massively multi-user and economically strong applications. Well, you can call them decentralized applications, right? And what we mean by economically strong is that if Web 1 was read-only, Web 2 was read-write, then Web 3 is read, write, and own, or read, write, and participate. So the economics are pretty much built in to the Web 3. It's not a separate thing that needs to be added. And of course, Ethereum back in the day paved the way for the first major wave of decentralized applications, right? Many of these logos or initiatives on the screen right now would be familiar to many of the audience here, right? So essentially, prediction markets, Augur was proven, Swarm, CryptoKitties back in the day already proved that NFTs could be done and needed a lot more scale. Maker, stablecoin, Digex, and we all of them somehow found product market fit. Now, the good side of the product market fit is that now this has been proven and this works at scale. What the other side is there wasn't enough supply, so limitations surfaced that severely hampered the projects. They were around low throughput and congestion and high fees, and of course, this is back in the day, but it's still pretty relevant in terms of average Ethereum transaction fee, Ethereum state growth, and now, of course, the industry has seen layer 2s trying to address the same thing across and limited opcodes, right? So you can't do complex innovations just because you are on top of a layer 1, and of course, proof of work was kind of wasting. So back in the day itself, custom blockchain trends emerged, right? So you had Zcash and Filecoin trying to do zero knowledge proofs and something around file storage, but then also a lot of business-friendly blockchains emerging, like Hyperledger Fabric, VeChain, Quorum, which were trying to specifically address the complexity that businesses needed to solve for the exact challenges that faced, right? So yes, with custom blockchains, you would get performance, security, sovereignty, right? So you could optimize it for what you're trying to create, and without any bottleneck around virtual machines, the attack surface would be reduced, and you're not dependent on any particular platform. But there are a lot of challenges, as anyone in business of blockchains or blockchains for business would understand. It's really, really hard. It takes years and a lot of money and effort to create a custom blockchain from scratch. You suffer from isolation because blockchains don't talk to each other, and you end in creating a lot more silos. Often, at times, the toughest question for businesses: which blockchain should I choose, and what vendor lock-in will I suffer if I do that? And lastly, of course, security. So public blockchains naturally compete with each other over security of resources, right? Leaving each one of them less secure because they are naturally competing with each other. So within the team at Parity, we try to um, solve for some of these challenges while enabling custom blockchains, right? So what we did was created a bunch of features and built them within Polkadot. And with Polkadot, our aim was to create a Web3 that supercharged blockchain innovation. Now, what do we mean by that? So we think we're moving to from public permissionless networks to private permission, and that's what the world saw. We're moving towards a hybrid multi-chain network. And that is what Polkadot is. So Polkadot is the next generation public blockchain infrastructure to connect public and private chains, right? And I know it's a mouthful, but you can pretty much imagine Polkadot as being a layer zero and then layer ones being built on top. So what do we mean by that? Well, there's a relay chain, which is at the heart of Polkadot. It's responsible for the network's shared security, consensus, and cross-chain interoperability. We have a concept of parachains or parallel running chains, which are all sovereign layer ones. Think of them as Ethereums in their own world of layer ones, each having their own tokens if they want to, and they can optimize their functionality for the specific use case. We have something called as parathreads, which are similar to parachains but are as pay as you go model. They're way more economical because they don't necessarily need the continuous connectivity to the network. And then we have a concept of bridges, which allows the relay chain and the whole Polkadot ecosystem to connect to external networks which are not substrate based. Ethereum and Bitcoin being some examples, but then Zcash, Libra, others being others. So where are we in terms of our ecosystem? Well, we're significantly ahead of others. We are facing a lot of developer activity. In fact, you can see us being one of the most active community in terms of core developers and percentage change wise, and second to only Ethereum. There's a lot of tooling being developed and services being developed on top. A select few examples are here on the screen. And then lastly, I want to introduce the audience here to Substrate. So Substrate is our attempt to essentially enable creation of custom blockchains. So remember when we said a few slides ago that creating custom chains is a headache. Now at Polkadot, we realized that custom blockchains, of course, are important, and we wanted to enable everyone to create their own chains if they wanted to, be it private permissioned or public permissionless. In fact, Polkadot itself is built using Substrate. Now, Substrate is built to power use cases, optimized blockchains. Uh, it is a modular framework. It offers seamless integration, on-chain governance, and programmable payment. Right. So it can power truly gasless transactions and feeless transactions. This is where customizability comes in, because you don't necessarily need to create a chain which has tokens, which has end user transaction fees. If your business needs uh, um, a chain with multiple tokens, that can be created. If your chain needs something with zero tokens or no transaction fees, that can also be created. It of course also offers hot swappable consensus, and then of course the hashing and signing algorithms, and pretty much all the features can be swapped out, right? It does also offer seamless integration with enterprise systems using off-chain workers, and there's a lot of technical functionality there, which we might not be able to cover in today's session, but happy to connect afterwards. Of course, it also allows for flexibility of optimization at every layer of the blockchain, be it consensus, storage, networking, some of which we already spoke about. Right, it's scalable. We have proven it to be going beyond 1500 TPS in a single chain. But then also remember that Polkadot itself can go way beyond, because it plans to connect to 100 plus chains, right? That's the publicly communicated goal, and it's written in Rust. It compiles to WebAssembly, which utilizes the compute resource for faster code execution. It's upgradable. So this is something which, again, the blockchain industry suffers from. Chains are created and they're not upgradable. The only way to upgrade chains is hard forks, and it so we created Substrate so that you can have on-chain upgrades extensively. Massive multi-user and economically strong applications. We went on to mention, as some of the audience would recall, about how Ethereum and multiple networks or applications found product market fit, specifically around the logos that you see on screen and many, many more. We also mentioned that multiple limitations surfaced that severely hampered the project, around transaction fees, state bloat, but then also proof of work, and then limited opcodes, right? So we basically then said, hey, custom blockchains are here, and that trend back in 2016-17 itself was pretty obvious, and businesses need their own blockchains and they need that customizability, and that trend is here to stay. But then we also mentioned that, hey, while you do need performance, security, and sovereignty as features or the case for business custom blockchains, there are limitations, right? It takes a lot of effort and years to create your own blockchain. Each business needs to choose which blockchain are they going for, and it's a very critical decision because then there's a business and vendor lock-in. But then also public blockchains compete with each other for their sovereignty. So what we then mentioned was, hey, Polkadot enters wave towards Web3 by supercharging blockchain innovation so that you do get the goodness of customizability, but then you also solve for the challenges that are faced. And also we mentioned that, hey, all of these chains will then be upgradable as well, so you don't necessarily need to hard fork and avoid the politically messy situation that we see almost all the layer ones go through, right? So that's essentially how we went on to define and create Polkadot as a hybrid multi-chain network, which is where we believe the industry is heading to. And we see less and less silos being created in this new public infrastructure around blockchains, and the ability to connect and interoperate between public and private chains. We went on to define the relay chain, parachains, parathreads as the components or the network elements of Polkadot, but also a few bridges. So parachains being the layer ones, and Polkadot itself being the layer 0, which is the relay chain itself. We went on to mention that we're facing a lot of active core developer in the community, and Polkadot is now second to Ethereum. But also you can imagine that Ethereum has a lot of low-hanging Solidity developers, as well as they've been around for some time. So really in that regard, Polkadot itself, along with the layer 0 positioning, as well as the massive community behind us, really is second to none. We went on to mention that APIs, tools, services are available. And then we went on to explain a little bit about Substrate, which is our platform or framework to create public permission, but then also private chains or public chains itself. We went on to define a few features around the modularity, the guarantees control, the scalability, the upgradability, as well as the resilient and robustness that one can get out of Substrate. Cool. So then I want to introduce the concept of crowd loans. Now, crowd loans are a unique concept within the Polkadot community, in which they are a mechanism so that different layer ones or substrate based chains can acquire their slots on the relay chain. Remember, a few slides ago, we mentioned the concept of parachains, and crowd loans are a mechanism of how one can acquire a parachain slot. So this is a multi-chain future we are imagining, in which businesses do not necessarily need to get a vendor logged into one particular chain of choice, and then not being able to upgrade their chain and being logged in to another data silo. That was not the vision in which blockchains were created. That is certainly not the vision of Web3 we see going forward, right? So in this context of a multi-chain future, in which chains are talking to each other and interoperating, and your information and data silos and assets are flowing freely in between each other, there is also a shared sense of security that Polkadot provides. And we have something called XMPP, which is enabling cross-chain communication. But only a limited number of projects can be a first-class citizen of Polkadot, at least to start with. Right? We needed to bootstrap the system and we then publicly communicated a vision of 100 plus chains. So how do we choose who gets a slot? Right? Then becomes a fundamental. If you have some limited bandwidth, and in our case, we communicated a vision of 100. How do you choose who gets a slot? Now, the scarcest resource in blockchain, or at least in public blockchains, is economic security. There's simply not enough to go around, right? So teams can struggle, and this has happened with multiple projects. The teams struggle to get backers for their projects, right? And chains can struggle to interoperate with a potentially unlimited number of protocols. So we wanted to create a network wherein teams can find enough backers for their projects, but then also chains can essentially interoperate with a limited set of different protocols, and then we expand the community from there. So that would essentially solve the bootstrapping problem. Now, cross-chain communication also becomes very, very key, and Polkadot provides a clear, provable method of communication delivery. Now, jumping straight into slot distribution, uh, this is where this is how we have decided, or the community behind Polkadot has decided, how the 100 plus parachains that we talked about might roughly lead to. So 10 to 30 being common good chains, bridge hubs, utility system chains, and you can already see our assets chain, which is live across both Polkadot as well as Kusama. Um, the utility chains or the system chains, other examples could be around governance, around tokens, and the bridge hubs. I think the name kind of speaks for itself. The least slots is where we mentioned around the concept of crowd loans and how you need to find community backers and to be able to bootstrap your own network. And this is where the concept of leased slots comes in. In Polkadot, that tenure is roughly 2 years, or exactly 2 years. And then Kusama, it's 1 year. And then there's a pool around parathread pools, right? So you will be getting over up to 50 slots, which is parathreads are being executed on a per block basis. So as we just said, on Polkadot, the slot duration is roughly 2 years, and each lease period is roughly 3 months, right? So for each slot on a parachain, this is how it would look like. Now, we also went on to define crowd loans, and essentially this is teams that need to raise DOT to use for a bidding in the parachain auction, and DOT token holders can allow actually to loan their tokens to be locked up for winning a slot. Now, when we say locked up, it's really locked up, and you do get your tokens back after the period, after the lease expires, which is in 2 years' time. Now, of course, parachain teams need to create incentives for the token holders, such as distributing their own tokens, or any incentive mechanism that they feel is relevant for their own community of users. And all contributions are, of course, returned to the original owners at the end of the slot. So hopefully with that, we've covered enough about crowd loans. Of course, happy to answer any questions, or feel free to check out our Wikipedia, as well as I think the bunch of YouTube tutorials around these, and the team here at Parity would be happy to answer any questions that you might have as well. Now, specifically around DeFi's and NFTs, wanted to touch a little bit about them. And so we have, again, people get confused about DeFi or NFTs, and NFTs, of course, representing the non-fungible side of things. But also, I wanted to mention a few things around fungible and semi-fungible. So just laying the lay of the ground across the board, and you can understand how fungible things could be anything between gold, stocks, Ethereum, Bitcoin, and then non-fungible going along the way on the right side of the spectrum. Now, we do have a lot of APIs, tools, and services, as I was mentioning earlier. And there are a lot of substrate based chains, right? So over 150 plus chains, custom chains, built using substrate, a lot of them in production. Only a handful of them, so 10 plus on Polkadot, and 27 or 30 plus on Kusama are live, interconnected, cross communicating with each other, and the pipeline across the board is huge, right? Now, I also want to mention some of the more enterprise or business friendly based substrate chains across energy, pharma, supply chain, and multiple other domains, including manufacturing, might be private permissioned. So they currently do not connect to Polkadot, but they sometimes have the ambition to connect to Polkadot. Again, various different mechanisms how that can happen to achieve the interconnectivity.
Siddharth, just
Now,
in relation to
this diagram
Siddharth,
essentially visually tries to represent what we have discussed, right? So Polkadot being the layer 0, as you can see on the diagram, the layer 1s being the protocols itself, which is the layer 1s or blockchains themselves. So we have quite a few of them. We mentioned Substrate has already 150 plus chains that we know of, right? Then, of course, you have layer 2s, SDKs, wallets, marketplaces on top. Then you have applications on top, which could be social networks, loyalty programs, art, virtual reality, gaming. And then finally, you have users. Now, of course, in a business scenario, the application layer or the layer 2s could be built by the businesses, and then it would interface with users.
hi Siddharth, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Just a couple of questions from our audience.
Please go
One
ahead.
of our audience wants to know how many applications of Polkadot are there since launch?
So there are over 550 plus teams that we know of, which are there around Polkadot or within the community. I encourage to check out a website called polkaproject.com, which is community created and community maintained. Since most of the technology that we create and deliver is open source, we don't necessarily get to know if people are using our technology. But I think the number is somewhere over 550 already.
Fantastic. Also, another question, we'll take one more because of time, is how often do you integrate new chains?
So thank you for that question. So we have two networks right now. One is Polkadot, one is Kusama. So Polkadot goes through a slot auction mechanism that we were just describing around crowd loans and everything. So currently, every few weeks, an auction is up for grabs, and crowd loans happen, and auction mechanism happens, and then a new chain is onboarded for interoperability. On Kusama side, there is also a similar scenario, right? So Polkadot itself went live a few months ago, and since then we have been onboarding chains every few weeks. Hopefully, by the year end or early next year, the number should be over 100 on both sides. Kusama is already with 30 plus live. These are chains interoperating with each other, and Polkadot with 7 or 10 right now. But continuous auctions on both sides are going on. This is more on the parachain side. Para threads are still to be released, so expect probably something by the end of the year, in which chains will be onboarded much more seamlessly, or lower barrier to entry around para threads side. There are also concepts around common good chains and other public infrastructure like XMPP we mentioned, or bridges, which also help in kind of interoperability of chains, and they have different mechanisms.
Thank you very much, Siddharth. I mean, there's a lot more questions. I'll implore you to go into the question and answer session area, so you can also pick up some questions from some of our audiences who are keen to talk to you. But also, if you could share the presentation in the Hangout area for our audience as well, so they can have access to it or send it to the organizer. But it's been absolutely an insightful session to learn a little bit more about Polkadot and what you guys are doing, and how, from an enterprise perspective, business solutions can partner with you. Just one last question before you leave: what is your plan for the African continent?
No specific plans right now. I think given the we are inundated with demand, and the way Polkadot or Parity or the overall network has expanded is that we are a lot more partner driven. So there is already a lot of demand, and the way we are supplying to that demand is by creating technology that can self-adopt itself, right? So we have a huge list of partners that already are live across Africa and other continents as well. So something that we speak very less about is our program with the United Nations World Food Program, which is essentially a stablecoin network with over 1 million plus refugees, and that's live across Bangladesh, Rohingya area, but then also Jordan and multiple other regions, right? So this is where I think the future of Web3 is a lot more distributed than we think, and hopefully Parity can find partners who believe in the vision and take the technology to where it deserves to be. We are expanding. We've just opened a Lisbon office, and we're planning to expand to other hubs. No specific announcements for Africa expansion or office yet that I can share with the audience.
Okay. Thank you very much to that. And we really appreciate it. So please do interact with the audience and share the presentation. And we look forward to seeing you again very soon. Thank you for a fantastic session.
Thank you.